Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Last Skywalker. So you might remember we did a fan fiction where Anakin has a sister, and if you haven't seen that one yet, go check it out. I'll leave the link in the description for you. So when I first sat down to write that story, I actually came up with two different versions. In one, the sister never becomes a Jedi, but in the other, both she and Anakin do. And today, we're jumping into that second version, imagining what could have happened if the two Skywalkers trained together in the Jedi Order. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and let's get into it. The story begins outside the slave quarters of Mos Espa, where a young girl named Rehea Skywalker sat atop a rusted moisture evaporator, gazing at the fading light. Below her, her twin brother Anakin, a boy of 9, worked tirelessly on his latest project, an old pod racer engine salvaged from Watto's junk shop. "You really think Watto's gonna let you race that thing?" Rehea smirked, crossing her arms. Anakin wiped sweat from his brow. "He has to. I'm the best pilot he's got." His voice was full of confidence, but Rehea knew her brother better than anyone. There was always a part of him that longed for more. Something beyond the sands of Tatooine. Rehea understood that longing too, but unlike Anakin, she was cautious. The following day, a new presence arrived in Mos Espa, a Jedi Master named Qui-Gon Jinn. When Qui-Gon met Anakin, he saw something extraordinary. The boy was strong in the Force, a vergence unlike anything he had encountered before. He spoke to Shmi, learning of Anakin's unexplained birth, and knew the Jedi had to take him. But it was Rehea who stood in his way. "You can't just take him," she said, arms folded, standing protectively in front of Anakin. "He's my brother." Qui-Gon looked at her curiously. "And you? Do you not wish to be free?" Rhea's heart ached at the question. More than anything, she wanted freedom. But something about Qui-Gon's interest made her uneasy. "I won't leave without her," Anakin insisted. Qui-Gon had sensed something within the girl as well. Her connection to the Force was strong. Perhaps she too had a destiny among the stars. After Anakin's stunning victory in the Boonta Eve pod race, Qui-Gon struck a deal with Watto. But instead of just one slave's freedom, he bargained for two. And so, Rehea and Anakin Skywalker left Tatooine together. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council examined the siblings. While they marveled at Anakin's raw talent, Rehea intrigued them for a different reason. She was powerful, but her emotions were tightly controlled. Unlike her brother's untamed spirit, she was more measured, more disciplined. Master Plo Koon took interest in her and spoke in hushed tones with Master Windu. Unlike Anakin, she did not carry the same reckless attachment to others. She had a quiet strength. "This one is different," Plo Koon said. "She could be trained without the same risk." In the end, the council made a controversial decision. Rehea would be trained, while Anakin's future remained uncertain. For the first time in their lives, the Skywalker siblings were separated. Anakin was taken under Obi-Wan's reluctant wing after Qui-Gon's death. Rehea was assigned to Master Shaak Ti. While Anakin struggled with his emotions, Rehea thrived. She embraced the teachings of the Jedi, finding solace in the structured discipline of the Order. Yet, despite her progress, she never forgot her brother. Meanwhile, Anakin grew frustrated. His sister had been accepted without hesitation, while he was constantly scrutinized, doubted, and warned against his feelings. Resentment simmered beneath his surface. Rehea saw it, but no matter how much she reached out, the distance between them only widened. Then came the Clone Wars. Rehea, now a Jedi Knight, led Republic forces alongside her master, Shaak Ti. Over the years, she had grown into a brilliant strategist, a warrior of grace and precision. But no victory felt like a triumph. The war was endless, and its shadow stretched further than the battlefield. She felt something was changing, something dark. And at the center of it, she sensed Anakin. Her brother had become distant. The boy who once shared every thought with her, who had once trusted her above all others, was slipping away. The war had hardened him, but it was more than that. It wasn't until one evening at the temple that Rehea discovered the truth. She had been returning from a late meditation session when she sensed familiar energy nearby. Two presences intertwined in a way she had only felt a handful of times before. Hidden in the shadows of the hallway, she watched as Anakin emerged from Padmé Amidala's apartment. His face was soft in a way she had not seen in years, not since they were children. As the door closed behind him, his hand lingered there for just a second too long. Rehea had suspected something for a while. The way Anakin looked at Padmé when he thought no one noticed, the urgency in his voice whenever she was in danger. But now, there was no doubt. They were in love. A part of her knew she should report it. Attachments were forbidden, and this would only bring trouble. But as she watched Anakin disappear down the corridor, she couldn't bring herself to do it. How could she condemn the one thing that made her brother happy? So she kept it to herself. As time passed, Rehea noticed another change in Anakin. He was exhausted, not just physically, but in a way that seemed to hollow him out from the inside. His temper flared more often, his patience frayed. Then, one evening, he came to her. His blue eyes, usually so bright, were dark with unease. "I need to talk to you," he said. Rehea frowned. "Of course. What's wrong?" He hesitated as if unsure whether to continue. Then at last he spoke. "I keep seeing it. Over and over," he said. "You and Padmé. Dying. What? I don't know how or when, but I see you both suffering. I see your deaths, and I can't stop it. I already lost Mom. I can't lose you, too." Rehea placed a hand on his shoulder. "Anakin, they're just dreams." But something rang in his mind. Rehea didn't ask why Padmé was in his dreams or what she meant to him. And in that moment, he realized she had known all along. Anakin tensed, forcing himself to remain composed. He couldn't let her see his surprise, his slip. "You haven't said anything," he said carefully, watching her. "Most people would ask why I keep seeing the same faces." Rehea met his gaze, unreadable. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." Anakin exhaled sharply, shaking his head with a forced chuckle. "There's nothing to tell. They're getting worse," he admitted. "More vivid, more real." Rehea held his gaze firmer this time. "They're just dreams." "No," he snapped. "They're more than that. I saw Mom's death before it happened, and now I see you and Padmé." He looked at her, desperation in his eyes. "Tell me how to stop it." Rehea's heart ached. She wanted to reassure him, to tell him it was all in his mind, but she knew Anakin too well. His visions were rarely just dreams. So instead, she asked, "Have you told Padmé?" He exhaled slowly. "I did. She told me the same thing you did, that it's just a dream." He shook his head. "But I know it's real." Rehea's grip on his shoulder tightened. "Then we'll face it together." But Anakin didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he turned away. "There's only one person who understands." Rehea felt her stomach tighten. The Chancellor. Anakin said nothing. That was the moment Rehea knew. Palpatine's hold on him had grown stronger than she realized, and her brother was slipping further away. Not long after, the Jedi Temple was in smokes. Across Coruscant, the screams of the fallen echoed through the Force. Jedi, younglings, knights, masters, were being slaughtered without mercy. Rehea Skywalker was far from Coruscant when it happened, leading an assault on a separatist outpost. But the moment Order 66 was executed, she felt it. A crushing wave of anguish as Jedi perished across the galaxy. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Something even worse shook her, Shakti's death. She felt it in every fiber of her being, a cold, crushing void through the Force. Her master, her friend, the one who had guided her for years, was gone. Rehea staggered, gripping the nearest surface to steady herself. Shakti had been more than just a teacher. She had been like a mother. And now, just like the others, she had been taken. Rehea barely had time to process the pain of Shakti's death before the clones around her hesitated, their helmets tilted slightly, as if listening to something. Then, as one, they turned their rifles on her. Rehea didn't wait for an explanation. She leapt, twisting in midair as blaster fire ripped through the space she had stood. She landed behind cover, heart pounding. The men who had fought beside her, trusted her, were now hunting her. She contacted Obi-Wan, her voice urgent yet steady despite the chaos around her. "My clones, they've turned against me," she said, barely catching her breath. The betrayal still burned in her mind, brothers in arms suddenly becoming executioners. She had fought her way out, but she knew she couldn't run forever. Obi-Wan's response was immediate. "Head to these coordinates," he instructed. "I'll meet you there." Navigating through the war-torn system, Rehea finally arrived at the rendezvous point, where Obi-Wan and Yoda were already waiting aboard Bail Organa's ship, the Tantive 3. Relief flooded her at the sight of them, but it was fleeting. The grim expressions they wore confirmed what she already feared. She was not the only Jedi who had been betrayed. The 3 Jedi, now fugitives, planned their next move. Coruscant was locked down, swarming with Imperial forces, but they needed answers. The Jedi Temple had fallen, yet within its ruins lay the truth. With Bail Organa's help, they secured a discreet landing in an abandoned sector of the city, moving through the underworld's hidden paths to avoid patrols. The closer they got, the heavier the air felt. The once sacred halls of the Jedi Temple now stood under Imperial control, guarded by clone troopers and security measures meant to keep any survivors out. Using maintenance tunnels and old Jedi escape routes, they slipped inside unnoticed. The smell of charred stone and death filled the air, but Rehea pressed on, forcing herself to ignore the bodies of fallen Jedi littering the halls. They made their way to the archives, where Obi-Wan accessed the security recordings. The moment the hologram flickered to life, Rehea's heart pounded in her chest. There he was, Anakin, clad in dark robes, leading an army of clone troopers through the sacred halls, cutting down Jedi with terrifying precision. Then, the moment that shattered her soul, Anakin kneeling before Darth Sidious. Tears burned at the edges of her vision, but she refused to let them fall. She had lost everything, her master, her fellow Jedi, and now, her brother. She couldn't breathe. She felt as if the world had collapsed around her. Her brother, the only family she had left, had become the thing they were sworn to fight. "To find and stop Anakin, you and Obi-Wan will," Yoda said, gravely. Rhea's head snapped toward him. "No," her voice was firm. "I can't kill my brother." Obi-Wan lowered his gaze. "I can't do it either. He's like a brother to me." Yoda sighed deeply, his ears drooping. "Gone, the brother you knew is. Consumed by the dark side, he is." Rehea shook her head. "Then send us to kill the Chancellor, not Anakin." Yoda met her gaze, sadness in his ancient eyes. "Too strong the Chancellor is. Confront him myself, I will." Rhea's breath hitched. She wasn't ready to accept this. How could she now be asked to end his brother's life? But deep down, she knew. If they didn't stop him, no one would. But she didn't know what to do. Her thoughts swirled in chaos, the weight of everything pressing down on her. "I need to think," she murmured before turning away from Obi-Wan and Yoda. Without another word, she retreated into a quiet corner of the ruined Jedi Temple, sinking to the floor in meditation. She tried to still her mind, to find clarity in the Force, but the echoes of death and betrayal clouded her thoughts. The visions of Anakin, the brother she had once known, flashed through her mind, each image more horrifying than the last. When she finally opened her eyes, her path was clear. Then, in that very moment, her comlink buzzed. She hesitated before answering. "Rehea?" Padmé's voice was unsteady, filled with worry. "Please, I need to see you." Padmé's apartment was silent when Rehea entered. The senator sat by the window, gazing out at the burning Jedi Temple, worry written all over her face as she rested her hands gently on her swollen belly. Rehea hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. "Padmé." At the sound of her voice, Padmé turned, her eyes red from unshed tears. "Rehea," she whispered, her voice laced with desperation. Tell me it's not true." Rhea's throat tightened. "I wish I could." Padmé shook her head, pressing a hand to her chest as if trying to steady herself. "Obi-Wan came to me earlier. He said Anakin has fallen, but I need to hear it from you." Rhea's heart ached at the look in Padmé's eyes. I saw the recordings, Padmé. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Anakin was at the temple. He led the attack. Padmé let out a shaky breath and looked away, her entire body trembling. For a moment, there was only silence. Then she spoke, her voice hollow. "He's on Mustafar." Rhea's eyes snapped to her. "How do you know?" Padmé swallowed hard. "Anakin himself told me that he's going to Mustafar, to end the war." Rhea clenched her fists, feeling a mix of urgency and dread settle over her. If she was going to reach Anakin, she had to leave now. Padmé looked at her pleadingly. "I have to see him. I need to talk to him." Rhea hesitated, torn between her duty and the desperate woman in front of her. After a moment, she nodded. "Then we'll go together." The lava fields of Mustafar were as unforgiving as the man who now ruled them. Rhea stood beside Padmé as their ship settled on the platform outside the Separatist stronghold. Anakin stood at the edge of the platform, gazing down at the river of molten rock below. "Rhea," he said, his voice almost soft, "you shouldn't have come." Rhea swallowed the lump in her throat. "You left me no choice." Padmé stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Anakin, what have you done?" Anakin turned to face them, his eyes dark and unreadable. "I've done what had to be done. The Jedi betrayed the Republic." He continued, "Can't you see? We don't have to hide anymore. I can overthrow the Emperor and we can rule the galaxy together." His gaze flickered to Rhea. "You too, sister. We don't have to fight." Rhea stared at him in disbelief. "You slaughtered the Jedi. You stood by as the Republic burned. And you expect me to stand beside you?" "This is our chance to make things right," Anakin insisted. "The Jedi held us back. They feared our power. But together, we can create something new." Padmé shook her head, tears streaking her face. "I don't know you anymore." Something inside Anakin snapped. "Then you're against me." He raised his hand, and suddenly Padmé was gasping for air. "Anakin, stop!" Rhea shouted. "You turned her against me!" Anakin roared, his grip tightening. Before Rhea could react, a ship landed behind them. The ramp lowered, revealing Obi-Wan Kenobi. Unbeknownst to them, Obi-Wan had followed in secret, keeping to the shadows as they prepared to leave. He knew Padmé would lead him straight to Anakin, and this might be the only chance to stop him. Anakin's fury burned brighter. "You brought him here to kill me?" He ignited his lightsaber. Rhea didn't move, didn't reach for her own weapon. She stared at her brother, her heart breaking. "This is the end, isn't it?" she whispered. Anakin's expression hardened. "For you, maybe." And then he attacked. The battle that followed was unlike anything Rhea had ever experienced. It was not a duel between Jedi. It was a war between broken souls. She and Obi-Wan fought as one. Obi-Wan with measured precision, Rhea with raw desperation. Anakin was stronger, but Rhea was faster. And Obi-Wan, his former master, knew his every move. The duel raged across the platform, then onto the metal scaffolding above the lava. Anakin struck with fury, and in his blade a blur of blue light. At one point, he knocked Obi-Wan aside and sent him crashing into debris, unconscious. Then it was just the two of them, brother and sister, saber to saber. For a moment, their blades locked and their eyes met. Rhea saw nothing of her brother in that gaze. She deactivated her lightsaber. "I won't do this, Anakin." Anakin's expression twisted in fury. "Then you will die." He raised his saber to deliver the final blow. Just then, Obi-Wan's voice rang out. "Anakin, don't!" But Anakin lunged, and in one swift motion, Obi-Wan slashed his limbs. Rhea screamed as her brother collapsed onto the burning rock. "You were the chosen one, Annie," she whispered. "And you chose this?" Anakin's body writhed in agony. "I hate you both." "I never hated you, Anakin," Rhea whispered as tears filled her eyes. But he was already lost. Obi-Wan turned to her. "We have to go," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. Rhea didn't respond. Her gaze remained locked on the burnt form of her brother. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Obi-Wan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, but she pulled away. "I can't, Obi-Wan." she whispered, shaking her head. I can't just leave like this. We have no choice, he urged. Padmé needs us. The mention of Padmé snapped Rehea out of her haze. She turned, nodding numbly, and followed him back toward their ships. But as they reached the landing platform, she stopped. Obi-Wan turned back, sensing her hesitation. Rehea? She shook her head. I can't go with you. Rehea, we need to stick together, he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. We're all that's left. Rhea's heart clenched. She knew that. But right now, she didn't know who she was anymore. The Republic was gone. The Jedi were gone. His brother was gone. I need to find my own path, she said quietly. Rehea, I'm sorry. Before Obi-Wan could protest further, she turned and strode toward her ship. The ramp hissed as it lifted behind her, sealing her inside. Obi-Wan could only watch as the ship's engines roared to life. Then, in a flash, Rehea was gone, lost to hyperspace. He then turned to his ship and set course for Polis Massa, where Bail Organa and Yoda were waiting for him.
Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, and may the Force be with you always.